All right, welcome back to the podcast. Another special episode for you on supported learning. I'm your host, Dr. Joe Sebastian, and my guest today is Aditi Javeri Gokhale. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for inviting me to this, Joe. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Me as well. And I appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule. I'm going to give you just a brief bio for our listeners out there. You have a Bachelor of Science and an MBA from the prestigious Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. And you are a Fortune 100 president. And past positions, you've been a CCO and a CMO. You're a business transformational and digital expert. We're going to talk about leadership on the podcast, but how we met, I think most importantly, you are a parent of a student in one of our programs. And I really enjoyed getting to know you on our calls. And, I wanted to kind of talk to you because you have a unique perspective because you've run a company or run companies at a massive scale. And wanted to invite you on the podcast today. So again, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Joe. And this is not a plug, but I cannot thank you enough for bringing my son over into your AP program. We could not have done it without your help.
Well, I appreciate that. And we're looking forward to seeing how he does and continue with you. So, just kind of getting into your background, what early experiences shaped your leadership journey, inspired your passion for innovation?
So, I'm born and raised in Mumbai, India, and, sort of came here to study at MIT. And after graduating from MIT, I went into consulting with Booz Allen Hamilton. And from there on, I took on corporate roles. And I think, one of the things, as I look at my career in the last 25 years, early on, as a leader, I was trying to conform to whatever the standards were, whatever the stereotype is, right? And that's what you do because you're sort of trying to fit in. But what I realized is identifying opportunities in terms of roles which most people run away from. So they are sort of complex in nature, hard problem solving, are the ones that I took. And that's how I stood out, and that's how I got promoted. And that's how I, to be very candid with you, probably got my first C-suite role. So taking a bit of risk and standing out versus being part of the sea of sameness, I think in my career has always helped me.
So basically solve bigger problems, make more money. Right?
No, I think it's solve complex problems.
Complex problems. That's interesting. Right. Okay.
It's not bigger problems. It doesn't, the more accountability you have and the larger role you have, then scale matters. But I think, complex problems that most people are like, okay, this is not a job I want to do because it's a high risk job. I think I went after those.
Got it. Did you come directly from India to MIT, or was that you? Oh, really? So you got recruited out of India from MIT.
Right.
That's really impressive. What was that process like?
Oh, that's interesting too. So I grew up in Mumbai, like I said, it's me and my sister. My parents, worked in their respective companies for almost 30, 40 years. So we were a middle-class family, didn't make a lot of money by my parents. And so, they essentially saved to put me and my sister through a private school education.
Okay.
In India at that time, most people either wanted to be doctors or engineers. And I kind of know what I wanted to do. And so one day I was sort of headed to my mom's office because her cafeteria had the best fried chicken. I kid you not. And it was I think I had a holiday from school, and I just was walking by the United States Education Foundation. Okay. So I went in and I spoke to a counselor, and that's really what sort of sparked my interest in a U.S. education. Unlike my son and his friends, where now you go and tour schools.
Right.
I had the Barron's Guide, and I picked up five schools. One of them happened to be MIT. And didn't tell my dad about it because I knew that my dad would feel really bad that he couldn't afford an undergrad education for his daughter. So my sister, myself, and my mom, we completed my application forms at night when dad went to bed. And
So secret, like kind
It's
of
a secret, yeah. And I couldn't even, to be honest, couldn't afford the application fee, which was I think $25 at that point. So I asked for a fee waiver.
okay.
And next I know is fast forward in the summer. The postman dropped off a packet, and I thought they were returning my entire MIT application. And I opened it up, and it was like I got into MIT.
That's impressive.
So that's how I started my journey. MIT, as many Ivy League schools, also do this. They give you a scholarship or a financial aid if you need it, and it's sort of set from the admissions process. And so 3 days later, I got I think a 99% scholarship.
Wow. Okay. That's awesome. It's like a no more true of the American story like that. That's awesome.
That's right.
Okay. So obviously fast forward through your career, you've driven transformation across multiple industries. Like, has there been a core mission, or what core mission has stayed constant throughout your career?
Transformation across multiple industries. I think the first thing I would say is that from every industry, and you're right, I moved from financial services with American Express to then travel to health and wellness, and then, to financial services, but more wealth and asset management. The thing that I sort of has helped me is understanding the industry dynamics for that particular industry, right? Understanding the business models, learning from that, and actually leveraging some of that into my next role. So, and much of my roles were sort of turnarounds and transformations. Especially in the industries that I sort of worked on, with travel and with nutrition. So with Travelocity, it was all digital work, right? And that digital transformation work that I learned and that I led, I was able to apply that to the next job.
Got it. So from, like, you were at Northwestern Mutual, right? And you've pioneered growth there. You pioneered growth at American Express.
Yep.
Was there a reoccurring gap in a corporate system that you feel like compelled to fix?
So I think the consistent theme across most of these companies has been trying to solve the technology issue. Right. So you've got a business transformation, you've got a strategy, but then you also have a technology issue, because many of these companies have legacy systems. And technology with some of the newer companies that I worked at, right, which was like a Travelocity or even a Shutterstock, or even the company that I founded, iQuantai, that starting from scratch and building out on a new stack and a new platform is so easy to do. But the issue that most of the companies, the larger companies, are that you've got legacy systems. So how do you deliver growth, and how do you deliver a transformation with some old platforms? And that has been a consistent theme.
Does that kind of boil down to, like, this is the way we've always done it? Like, why would we? Is that, I mean, because, like, in education, we are very slow to change. And I think corporations are also on the cutting edge, but I assume because of legacy systems, there's still some of that. This is the way we've always done that. So you're causing, and now you have profits on the line too, right?
That's
so
right.
You have to be bold, as you mentioned earlier, about taking risks, because if you make the wrong mistake, that it's detrimental to the company and people's jobs. So I mean, was that hard as well? Like, how?
Yeah, so I think you're saying something that I should have probably added on. So one of the issues is like dealing with technology and legacy systems, but the other issue, if you're thinking about a transformation, is your way of thinking and the culture of the company, right? And so the mindset of the board and the leader is very important in terms of wanting to transform a company or wanting to transform a division. And so that mindset has to be, open to taking risks, open to failure at times. And if you don't have that mindset, all the other stuff, like, how do we rehaul technology, or how do we change a business model, or how do we develop a new product, doesn't really matter, because if you don't have the will, the skills there, but if you don't have the will, you're not going to move forward. So the culture and the mindset of the leadership team is extremely important.
So you mentioned technology, and obviously we all know AI is here to stay. and it's going to be it's already a disruptive agent, but it's going to be extremely disruptive. But how do you see it transforming executive decision making, particularly in wealth management, financial services over the next 3 to 5 years?
So, I think the first thing I would say is as far as AI, and I totally agree with you, it's here to stay. When you're talking about executive leadership, one of the things is that now boards and leaders have to feel comfortable and knowledgeable enough to understand and deal with AI. So gone are the days where it was a job of the chief information officer, right? This is so fundamentally going to change client experiences, products, marketing. Like, it's going to touch every single function. So the start of it is that leaders and boards have to understand the implications of AI and not be scared of it,
Right.
but actually lean into it. Right. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is as it pertains to the wealth management industry. So if you think about the wealth transfer that's going to happen in the next 10 years, we're talking about 15 to 20 trillion. Right. And much of it is from baby boomers to Gen Xers and millennials. So the wealth management industry, the wealth industry is going to only grow. And we've seen that the growth is huge. But I think the ones that are going to win are the ones who actually incorporate AI as part of the value proposition. So let me tell you what I mean by that. So, advisors. So if you think about wealth management advisors, I've spoken to hundreds of them, and the constant need is that we want to do what we do best, which is give advice. Right. But we spend most of our time dealing with systems, paperwork, customer service issues. So if AI can help solve all of that, think about the amount of time an advisor can spend in financial planning with a client. The ones who do more of that are the ones who are going to succeed. So I think when it comes to AI, if from a starting point, of course, it's efficiencies and automation in the wealth industry. But then I think post that, and I haven't seen much of that, and I know some companies are starting to do that. How can AI leapfrog revenue generation opportunities?
Right.
How can AI figure out new products and services that we haven't even thought about today? Right now, the focus has been around efficiency and cost cutting and replacing people with AI, right? Or supporting in terms of service operations. But I think the next step is going to be about how can I incorporate AI based on all the data I have, figuring out the best product for my target customer.
That's interesting, because I think we're also, here we're looking at that in education too, of integrating, for our company, integrating AI into the tutoring role to help tutors and be more consistent of delivery of service across the platform.
Right.
But I guess the hesitation and probably where people are scared is because, as you mentioned, it could be a job replacement.
Right.
But I think it puts more ownership on the inputs and the quality of questions and the inquiries that you actually ask it.
Absolutely.
And knowing that. So, like, what role do you see that in like, if for people who are interested in going into a field that you went into, like, how much ownership, how much emphasis should be on that crucial critical thinking role?
So I think when it comes to education, there is a debate, right, about AI supporting, let's say, from a student perspective, how much should we allow students to use AI? I think when it comes to the education industry in general, AI. So the ones, I'm going to take a step back. In the next 2 to 3 to 4 years, the people who understand how to use AI to develop, innovate, create insights are the people who are going to win. So not replication as much as, okay, what is this telling me? What's the so what? So educators today, if they're going to be like, okay, let's use whatever Chat GPT to help write a module for my class. Great, do that. The real conversation is going to be in class, taking that information and having those discussions about insights and ideas. right? Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where educators, if they start to, it's the same philosophy of what I talked about in wealth management.
Right.
Advisors have to give advice. And that human aspect, I don't believe is going to go.
Right.
It's going to get better with the support of AI, right?
Right.
Human aspect is not going to go. The same thing around education. If the fundamentals can be figured out in terms of support through AI, the real insights and innovation is in those conversations.
I love that. What do you like? You've mentioned transformations through uncertainty and change, right? So obviously we're probably going to go through a lot of more uncertainty with as we figure out the role of AI. But how do you think systems thinking can be more effectively applied to rewire legacy institutions for agility and innovation? You don't necessarily just have to talk about, I know your experiences in corporate, but obviously there's some crossover with education.
So, when you say systems thinking, I want to make sure I understand it is sort of the interaction of multiple systems, correct?
Yes.
Right. So back to, I think if I had to talk about it in terms of the companies I've worked at, the focus should not be about figuring out how to integrate all the systems. The focus should be about how do I create maybe a middle layer and upgrade the systems that matter, don't upgrade the systems that don't matter, to sort of be more relevant to clients. The ones who are starting to think about, okay, I need to reset this whole situation, they're investing a lot of money and not making progress. But the ones that are making progress are the ones saying, okay, I have to create relevancy. I have to be competitive. How do I integrate the new platforms and services that are out there into the systems that I have to continue to be relevant?
This episode is brought to you by Supported Tutoring, where we don't just help students get better grades, we help them become critical thinkers. Whether it's mastering AP exams, maximizing college applications, or building lifelong learning habits, our expert tutors focus on critical thinking, confidence, and real growth. Head to supportedtutoring.com to find the support your student deserves. Gotcha. That's interesting because, I if you're in public education like I am, in that you just see so the adage from our doctorate was every system is designed perfectly to get the results you get. So if you don't like the results, it's because the system's designed that way, and you have to figure out how do you actually analyze it, evaluate it, and change it. Do you find that as well in corporate, because you obviously it's a different layer and different structure?
Yeah.
But and I guess, how do you drive change through that? Like, do you have like a specific example where it was like complicated and that you had to think at a much more higher level and take those risks?
Yeah. So, I can give you an example, in terms of in the wealth management industry and some of the work that I've done there. The idea is not to look at all the different systems that connect with each other and deliver. Let's just talk about client experience, because that's been my expertise. The piece that we've got to figure out is, and it always starts with, what do our clients want? So let's just talk about an omni-channel experience, right? An omni-channel experience means that every client chooses to be served or connected in a channel of their choice. So we have to just be there. And customers today, they don't differentiate in between, this is a financial services company, so I'm going to be okay with their experience, versus this is a travel company. They just want a good experience.
Right.
And so the real issue that I always saw when I was thinking about client experiences, what are the touch points that matter? Right? And when I say matter, there are three aspects to it. It is cost efficiency, revenue generation, or what I call surprise and delight, right? Matter to the customer. Like, how can I go over and above? So figuring all those pieces out and saying, okay, how can I deliver those in the most efficient way? So that's how I've thought about client experience. It's not about, oh, you know what, let's just reconnect, or let's figure out why the system is not creating the outcome that I want it to be. It's really starting with, what does my client want, or my customer want, my target customer. That's the other piece of it. You cannot solve a problem for all customers. You've got to solve for your target customer. Then how do I create efficiencies, right? How do I create more value, and how do I create uniqueness, which is, the surprise and delight. And the ones who do that are the ones who are winning.
Interesting. There's a lot of crossover in that. And I don't, there's some aspect of schools starting to think about the delivery of service, but it's not anywhere near where it needs to be. Obviously, as I stepped into the entrepreneurial world,
Right.
it's all about client success. But
Right.
it's interesting because corporations are thinking like that. With that being said, is there anything like in the conventional playbook that you think it's time to retire or get rid of in corporate strategy?
I think the conventional playbook, and this is my personal, it's just something that I don't feel that I think is needed. There are lots of companies, large companies, and I've spoken to many of my colleagues. There's still this formal atmosphere of having meetings and meetings and meetings. And again, I don't know if this is really addressing your question, but that formal structure of having meetings and sitting together is expensive, and if you don't make a decision, it's again inefficient. And now with everything we have, Slack and WhatsApp and what have you, I think having those quick interactions
Right.
and reaching a decision will move things forward in a much faster pace. And less of that formal structure. Of course, you need to have meetings like shareholder meetings and board meetings and town halls for your employees and all of that. But your day cannot go from 9 in the morning to 5 sitting in meetings, right? Because you've
Right.
got. So if there are ways that you can create more efficiency there.
Do you have that conversation? How much is this meeting costing the company?
Yeah, we've had
Really?
few of those.
We say it in education, but no one cares. So that's what we get.
No, we care.
The whole
Corporate
leadership team
side,
gets together. How much is this costing us? But they don't look at it like that.
we absolutely care.
I gotcha. So retire the why are we meeting? There has to be an actionable item for the reason we have to get unstuck. That's interesting.
Right. And then the other thing, I think this is I think I read JP Diamond say this the other day in some article. If you are at that meeting, you have to be completely focused. And sometimes I wonder, it's like how we tell our kids, right? Keep your phone in the other room when
Yeah,
you're
right.
put your phone. I think because there are people who are just like constantly like
Yeah, they're not unplugged.
So if you're there like this, there needs to be like a huge amount of focus.
Did you see how like Jeff Bezos runs meetings?
Yeah, I did.
Where he's like, everyone's gonna actually read the memo in the meeting because I know you read it. Like we're actually gonna spend time reading the memo than discussing. It's interesting because I just how many people actually did it. So and then could this meeting have been an email thing?
That's right. And then the other thing I think is I think it's about time, maybe I may be controversial, but I think we should rethink whether PowerPoint as an idea.
Oh yeah. As Dwight Schrute, I don't know if you're an Office fan, but as Dwight Schrute said, a PowerPoint is boring, right? Can you reflect or share a moment or a metric that powerfully reflects like an impact with a strategic bet that you made in the corporate world where you had to drive that change and you took a chance?
Yeah, I mean, most of my roles have been about understanding sort of the main issues, figuring out what the strategy is, and placing a few bets. I think early on in my career, where I sort of made a strategic bet, and I don't want to be very specific from a confidentiality perspective.
Yeah, that's okay.
But there was a division that I was overseeing that was much more of a cost center, creating huge amount of sort of engagement and loyalty to the company, but still was a cost center. And so I sort of thought about, okay, why can't we make this a revenue generation opportunity? And sort of rethinking that created a huge amount of value. And that changed the trajectory of that division.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So just like flipping it completely.
How do you measure things, especially disruptive change, even when results don't actually show up on a P&L statement?
I don't think that's even true in this day and age. With all the data that you have, I mean, it may not be like the final metrics of like revenue and profitability. There could be stuff happening through the process, but like there is no excuse, I feel, at this stage where things are not measurable. If they're not measurable, then it's probably not the right thing to do. That's what I would always tell my team. because everything can be like data driven and can be analyzed now if you do it the right way.
You should come give a lecture at a school. It's like, that's like, we're much in, I don't, it's because I think how data integrated with schools during the age of like reform and during the age of accountability with standardized testing was
Right.
implemented all incorrectly, is that we have more data than ever on kids, but we don't actually do anything with it.
That's the problem. That's the problem. So again, back to, you know, we were talking about AI, but I'm talking about the people who are going to succeed are the ones who are questioning. So what's the so what? What are the insights?
Mhm.
Right? And if you don't do any of that, and if you just keep collecting data, then it's just, you're just going to be at the same place that you were before.
Right. So you're a mom of a teenage boy
Yeah.
in high school. How much has it changed? How much has it stayed the same? What is some advice for fellow parents, especially coming from a different country like India or first gen, like that you would give navigating this complex education system that we call America?
Yeah, I think and I've seen it. There are three industries that I feel passionate about: health, wealth, and education. And I think education more because I grew up in a very different educational system. When I came here, it was completely different. And now, when my son started even in kindergarten, and the way he was taught math, right? And I used to sort of wonder because he was taught math in like there are 5 apples and 4 oranges, and then he had to draw 9, all of that. And the way I just sort of knew 5 plus 4 equals 9. So it's just evolved so much. And I think where I am, and I firmly believe this, and this is something that I tell my friends too, is the educational, jobs that are 50% of the jobs till my son graduates from university don't even exist today. They just don't, right? So I think the way education should be, I think this whole craziness about um, testing and going to a certain school, all of that, I think the way I'm looking at it is that it really matters where he feels most comfortable. I didn't have that choice. I just picked up 5 schools, right? Um, Kids have choices. Everyone is going to go to some school if you have the desire to go to school, to university. The real question is, what do you do with that education? And I think most companies now, they're not looking at just the top schools. They're looking at really, really smart kids who can create value. And that thinking has changed, right? So that thinking has changed. But I still feel the educational system hasn't changed enough. So I think the way for parents to think about it is it has to be the right fit for your child, because your child needs to be healthy, happy, uh, feel like it's the right culture, and then has to really stand out within that system. Companies are actually changing their thinking because they understand that talent is going to be critical. This new kind of talent, as AI sort of becomes a pretty standard way of doing business. And then the other thing is that I mentioned is, professions that kids don't even know exist. So to me, a child graduating from college doesn't need to have a deep expertise in any particular language. I think to me, what matters as an executive, when I've looked at candidates that have stood out, critical thinking, great communication skills, what I call executive presence, but that's sort of confidence.
Right.
The ability to be thinking outside the box with a different perspective, not conforming at all times. Those are the skills that matter.
From your experience, what do you think schools need to do better? I mean, just from your son's experience, what do you think schools need to do better in prepping for those, right? Like those.
Yeah, so I think where I mean, and we've switched schools, and we feel like we've really landed on a good school, because I think the schools that are all about the book knowledge, right? I don't know if that's really going to be relevant. I mean, I don't know if knowing all the dates of AP US history events and presidents really matters, right? I think what really matters is the character and the leadership qualities of some of the presidents that changed the landscape of
Right.
the American economy or the American political system. So understanding those two, three sort of insights and having those classroom discussions in terms of how do you think things are going to work? If you were in this person's shoes, what would you have done? Pushing that thinking versus like the rote, like I need to memorize this because,
Right.
I know my vocab terms. And you can do that in pretty much every subject, other than I would say to a certain extent, math is math, right?
Right. Well, I mean, you could, yeah, math is math until it's like, if you have a complex physics problem, what kind of math do we have to know to
Correct.
solve this problem?
Correct.
I mean, what are we not getting? But is there any advice you would give families listening or watching of a career field you might not advise their child to pursue in the next 10 years because of the disruption?
I don't know. I don't know if I can be qualified to answer that question, because I've spoken to parents who are like, oh my god, I just hope my son or daughter is not an art history major, right, or is not doing literature, right? I mean, you've heard that too. But again, if this kid has the critical thinking, has the communication skills, is able to problem solve, shows grit and resilience, that's what matters.
Do you think other parents, especially from India, do you think there's a learning curve? Because I've seen it in terms of they're still approaching it as memorization, as like because I'm assuming, I've read a little bit on the Indian education, that it is still built differently than American in terms of like you study like this is how you study, and then you take a test and you move on.
Right.
It's not like everything is connected. Is that kind of how it is, or is it?
Yeah, I think when I grew up, it was pretty much that way, right? And I found it difficult to switch from the way I was taught. And when I started at MIT, and I still say to this day, I'm so glad the first year at MIT was pass fail. I really do, because you're sort of adjusting to so many things, the
Right.
accent, the way of much was classroom participation also.
Right.
Then your problem sets that come in on a Thursday and you've got to like solve it within a record time. All of these things are like fairly different to the way I grew up in terms of the Indian education system. I'm not qualified to really know, because I've been here for most of my life now, what the education system is. But what I can tell you is that, because I have two nephews, and so the younger nephew did go to a school which was much very similar to the one that my son's going to, where there was a lot more, and I think it was a IB curriculum,
Yep.
maybe that's why it was different, but there was a lot more around participation, thinking, creative thinking. So I think there's an evolution happening, but my data point is just of one.
I gotcha. So, would there be any one last insight? I guess one insight you wish you could share your younger self when you started this C-suite journey, or even going into college. If you could go back in time, and one piece of advice you would give to your younger self.
I think one piece of advice I would give to my younger self, not even just to my younger self, even now, maybe, is it all just works out. It all works out. Don't sweat the small.
I love
And
that.
by the way, I did not know I wanted to be a corporate executive, right? I was in management consulting. I started my job at American Express. I loved my experience then. I sort of moved up. And then sometime I started up my own company and then went back into a corporate career. So you don't have to have a linear path also, right? So that's why I said it all works out.
Amazing. Well, with that, we'll end it there, unless you have any final thoughts or
No, this was really fun, and thank you for the invitation. I think you and your team are doing a fantastic job, and I think what I can personally say is you, at least what I've seen with my son's sort of interaction with everything that you and your teachers are doing, is that they're really trying to meet where he is versus having him conform.
Right.
And I think that's very unique in the way you've led your program versus some of the others that I've seen.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thanks for watching. Before you go, if you're a parent with a son or daughter taking the SAT, ACT, or any AP subject, or needing college admissions guidance, and you're watching them stress about test scores or worry about getting into their dream college, we've created the exact resources that have helped over 450 plus students get scores of 4s and 5s on all their AP exams, get into their target colleges, build unshakable confidence, and secure their future careers. Everything you need is down in the description below. Our proven test prep strategies, college admissions roadmap, and confidence building system. So go down to the description and click the link right now and give your son or daughter the tools they need to succeed. Because your son or daughter has everything it takes to achieve their dreams, they just need the right guidance to unlock their potential. Hit that link below and let's make it happen.